has been mourning. This past week, the funeral was held in Memphis. The 29-year-old Tyree Nichols, who died 3 days right after police brutally beat him at a traffic stop on January the 7th. The funeral was an emotional funeral, but then also a deeply joyful moment as they told the story of Tyree Nichols, who was not just brutally beaten, but was a beautiful human being. He was a skateboarder, he was a father, an incredible friend, a creative human being, somebody who deserved to make it to 30. In this moment, we're dealing with, once again, the trauma, the grief, and the pain that is associated with another young black life being taken away at the hand of police. And sure enough, we know that this is not a reflection of all police officers, but this is a real moment where we have to really deal with the pain. So, it's Reverend Stewart, and I am joined by Reverend Dr. Charles Goodman, incredible pastor, an incredible human being, leader in this moment. My brother, Marcus Camp. I need to get everybody's name right. Yeah. Title name. Are we good on keeping that right? Yeah. Let me get everybody's title name that they want. Reverend Dr. Charles.
Yeah, you got it.
Cool. I'm good, Marcus Camp.
Sure.
Yeah.
That's it?
Yeah, I'm deacon.
Okay.
Oh.
Can I say deacon?
You can.
You should be fine with me saying deacon.
Yeah, I'll be okay.
Okay.
Ryan Johnson.
All right, cool.
Yeah.
All right, cool. All right, perfect. All right, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And so in this moment, we wanted to do, something, new and vulnerable and special, to talk with friends about this moment, about how we're processing this moment, about how we're thinking through this moment. And so we're joined by our pastor, Reverend Dr. Charles Goodman, incredible leader, Deacon Marcus Campbell, incredible leader, and Ryan Johnson, an incredible leader. Beautiful black men who are processing this moment right now, and I think it's important for us to think through that and all our various kind of different avenues of life and perspectives. I think it's important for us to come together and kind of think through this moment together, because I feel, honestly, that, it's not just young people that's processing this moment. It's not just those who are skateboarders that's processing the moment. It's not those who just like leaders in the world processing this moment. It is all of us in our individual lives processing this moment. Mm-hmm. So I guess my first question is, how are you processing this moment? How are you doing in this present moment?
I think if I want to start, I think for me, with all shootings or things that happen to people of color, I'll watch every single one. And I think subconsciously I'm watching because I'm trying to figure out what can I personally do different to not be in this situation, or how can I personally survive this to make it home to my kids, to my family, so I won't have to be a hashtag, if you will.
Yeah. I think I'm having a conversation. So I have a son who's 30. He's a father. He has 2 daughters, 5 and 4 months. As a matter of fact, I called him recently to rehash. We've had this conversation before, but to rehash it. Hey, what are your thoughts on what just happened? So I'm processing it through having a conversation. I want to make sure I'm torn between trying not to overparent because he's a grown man, successful young man. I'm proud of him. But at the same time, I want to check in with him to make sure that he's tracking, that he has the tools that he needs to navigate through this process too.
Yeah, I think for me, I'm numb. I think a part of it is when more of the information came out, and I will go on record and say I'm not trying to look at the video. I have no desire to look at the video. I stated this, I think, one of the services past week, that really in this moment, I start thinking about the larger narrative, maybe the people who are not hashtags, who've also become victims of this. Even within our local context, we've had, even our own in this area in the city, someone who lost life through an interaction with law enforcement. And it just gets tiring. And I feel like I'm just kind of numb, and I'm like, here we go again. And there is honestly a sense of despair and dread that you just have. Just like, what else is it?
Another one.
Yeah, and it's just so I'm not necessarily sure that I'm really even kind of processing it as I did before. You know, before when we were at this reckoning. I mean, way before George Floyd. I mean, Rodney King. We could go through the list. It's just you just get tired, and then you just look upon yourself. I agree with Ryan, and sometimes I just be like, okay, what can I do to just get home?
Yeah.
You know, and why should a traffic violation be an end of life situation? That in itself is always the hardest thing for me, because when we think about these moments, and you hate having conversations with people who just fail to share empathy. You know what I mean? Regardless if someone's wrong or not, we are supposed to have a justice system that's supposed to allow people to have their day in court. And a lot of times we see these things happen where people lose their life in these interactions over stuff that's so trivial. And even if they are guilty, then we have a system that says, arrest them, let them go before court, have their day. And if it's jail time, fine. If it's a fine, fine, but not death. And that thing just feels so in that moment, just so excessive and final. So I don't know. I just can't, I can't take myself to even, I'm not going to see the video, and I struggle. It's really just one of those moments like, here we go again. So it was deflating.
That's real. My father actually called me. That would have been Friday. My dad called me. Actually, I missed his first call, and I picked up his second one because usually, I told my dad that I had to be out of town, so he knows that like I got to kind of lock in. But he called me twice, and I picked up the second one, and my dad was like noticeably like moved and angry. Noticeably shaken up. And like when you on the phone with somebody and they may have like tried to get themselves together before the conversation, it felt like that. You could like feel almost like the kind of, almost this bouncing between like irrational talking to like very deep emotional like feeling, and you kind of feel it in their voice, in their chest. And my dad was talking to me about that, and I was just like, yeah, like, dang, they're like, like he's going from they lynched him to, like I couldn't do it, to like, I would have to take medication, or like somebody would have to like hold me back, or things like that. And my dad, the 60-plus-year-old man, is calling his son just because he didn't need anything. He just wanted to hear the voice of his son. He just wanted to hear my voice. And I asked my dad, I said, like what does that do to you, man? Like, what is that really doing to us? 'Cause I feel like in these conversations, we talk about what has happened to those like Tyree Nichols, but I don't think we talk enough about like what it does to us. So I'm interested, like Marcus, we Deacon Campbell, we have talked a bunch on, like mental health and like trauma in the body, for those who are in some sense, numb to this moment, or to those who this may be for their first time ever, like hearing the sounds, or actually they, like me in this moment, I have chosen, made a choice, to watch the video, to hear the sounds. It's a personal choice for me. I've made a choice to do that. But so for the person who in this moment is like, I'm either numb, and I don't know what to feel, because it's again and again, or the person who's chosen to say like, yo, I personal choice have chosen to watch. How is that affecting us emotionally, and I guess physically or spiritually?
Well, I think it's unique to each individual.
Yeah.
And their experiences with this. But what's good that I've heard is, number one, you want to recognize it. You want to know, I'm numb. I'm not feeling this right now. Because when you recognize it, then you can start to address it. You can start to process it, whether it's internally or you can seek help and talk to a counselor, talk to somebody that you can process this with. But what you don't want to do is you don't want to keep it inside of you, and you don't want to ignore your feelings because somehow they have a way of seeping out in some other way. So I think, first of all, recognizing it, recognize it for what it is, even if you're being vulnerable to yourself. Understand I'm not feeling this, or I'm anxious, or, I'm scared. Fear. A lot of times we don't want to admit that we have concerns because we want to keep this tough exterior. But I think recognizing that and then putting a plan in place to address it and process it, I think would be a course of action that would be beneficial to that individual.
Have y'all had conversations with friends this week?
Yeah.
Especially pastor friends.
Yeah,
Like I'm wondering about like how pastors are doing in this moment.
Yeah, I know many of the pastors in Memphis. Dear friend and little brother who actually preached here, Dr. Jason Turner, is the one who hosted the funeral for our beloved brother. And so many of them have pastor friends, Pastor Earl Fisher and others in Memphis, Chris Davis, who's no stranger to our church as well. So they're processing it, seeing it boots on the ground. But I think Dean Campbell said something that I feel like is so interesting, and other demographics don't understand it. There is a communal traumatic experience that we in the African American diaspora just wrestle with. Whenever we see one issue, it just brings this collective grief to bear on all of us, right? Like, it's hard for people to see that, especially who don't understand us culturally. But for us, it's our brother, it's our son, it's our friend. Like, when we see moments like that, we see ourselves, and we can't find distance between that, right? I can't just see him as another individual. We have to embody that. And, there's another side to it, especially when you see that the officers are the same color as you, which, again, begins to let us understand the real far reaches of the system, and that white supremacy can be perpetrated by people who look just like you, right? And so it's not just at the hands of those who look foreign to you, but it can even come from those who share your same hue and your same color. And that, again, is very kind of alarming and challenging. And that collective trauma is just it. We all felt the weight of it. And every time it happens, we all feel the weight. It doesn't matter where you are. You can be in Memphis, you can be in Augusta, you can be in Timbuktu, you can be, it don't matter, man. And so there's this communal thing that we wrestle with when something like this happens to our own. And once again, it goes back to the piece, like, it's not about guilt or innocence for us in that moment. That's another conversation. If someone's did right or wrong, it's the fact that we just believe that none of these things are egregious enough that someone should lose their life over it. And that's the part where I feel like always gets lost in it, because we always want to replay it for the victim to be victimized again. And in these moments, it always becomes a referendum on the victim or the person. And then we got to go back and feast through their past, and we got to find some way to justify. And I'm like, I don't care how they were as a person or whatever has happened. I just don't feel, and the humanity in me just doesn't want to see people think that should be an end, and that's just the feeling. So that's how I felt about it, that collective trauma.
Ryan, have you talked to homeboys?
I talked, I'm from Atlanta, Riverdale, Georgia, like a populated area. So like in my particular county, Clayton County, we had task force, sort of like the Scorpion unit that they had. That would jump out on people no matter what happened. So like, we were always aware that stuff like this happened. But like, again, like I said earlier, we was always making sure, like, if we came from wherever, walking from the gas station, from picking up candy, coming from the Candy's Lady House, being very careful about how we moved. So like, a lot of my friends now are like, are sad that it happened, but it's like, bro, this happened, like you said, here in Augusta, in Atlanta, in Charlotte, in Greensboro. It happens everywhere. So it's for us, it's kind of like, man, another one.
Yeah.
That's real. And what was interesting for me is that, like, a lot of times the conversation, especially in these moments, the conversation is about whether, you know, either that person, like Tyree Nichols, was a good individual or bad individual. And then the conversation shifts and says, okay, are those police officers good police officers or bad police officers? Which I think that misses the question. You know, he deserves to run when he is afraid.
Yeah, it's not on,
We
it's
as
not
human
on us.
beings deserve to run when we are afraid. We deserve, you know, to be able to make it to court. We deserve to be able to, like, live and be free and not have to fear, like so many of us have to, like, keep your head on. It's like keep your head on the swivel.
Yeah.
You know, you have to make sure that no matter where you at, you got to make sure you like, you know, doing the right thing or keeping your head in the game so that you don't like get caught slipping in the wrong way. And I don't think that we should have to bear the burden, you know, of not just the argument that we are human, but the actual, like, ways to protect it. Like, I don't think that should be the case. But then with policing, I think so many people miss that, like, yo, it's not whether there's good police or bad police. The question I wonder is, why does policing as a profession in this country continue to produce such bad incidents toward people who should make it home? That's the question that I wrestle with. And I'm just wondering, like, what other questions have been arising as y'all have been wrestling through this?
Yeah, and it's interesting. I really want to turn it back, and I may shift on that because I do think another question I raised that I think you three could answer. Y'all are fathers.
Yeah.
And before I get on to how I, you know, as we think through policing and we have people within our community and even within our church who we know have pledged their life and sacrifice to the institution. I would like to ask y'all, like, how did y'all feel as fathers? Which is a unique thing. I think Deacon Campbell kind of spoke about it a little earlier. But Ryan and Dante, y'all have young sons, right? So and we can't leave our sisters out because we've also seen these instances happen not just with young Black men, but we've seen it with young Black women, you know. So, and how do you process, you three, if you will, this moment as a father?
I think, so last night, I talked to both of my parents about this situation. And then my mom told me, she said, you know, once you have, you know, a child, that'll be the last day you get a full night's rest. Right? So she said, every night you're always constantly, even though you're asleep, but you're subconsciously listening for any kind of noise from a newborn. And then even when I got older and I was going out hanging with my friends, she said, even now, like, she never gets a full night's rest. So for me, like, my sons that people see, my little boy and then my oldest one, like, for me, I'm one of their heroes, right? And then growing up as a kid, you see the police, the firemen, the ambulance as a hero. So, like, it turns into, at one point, how do I change the narrative? Like Santa Claus, like, all right, some police are good and they can be heroes, but after a certain age, when you turn this certain age or you get this certain height or you get tattoos, like, you're this image of something that people are naturally afraid of. So you're growing up and every day I feel like I'm having to rewrite a warning label for my sons on how to conduct themselves after a certain age. And then, like, stuff happens, like the little girl who beat up the teacher not too long ago. Like, so teachers now are naturally afraid of African Americans. So, like, we're always guilty until proven innocent instead of innocent until proven guilty. And it's tough. I will say it's tough.
You know, so for me, this is urgent because my son is of that age right now. And even now I'm feeling some kind of way because, I mentioned I don't want to overparent, but the one thing that has never left me was my desire to protect him. So that's the conversations we've had about this on numerous occasions. I'm checking in, hey, are you tracking this? Because this applies to him now. He's 30, 6'2", athletic built, previous football player. He fits the description. So I'm concerned every day. And I remember when the mother said, I never thought it would be my son. All this stuff that we see happening to other people, but we're not immune to it happening to us. And my son is in that realm right now to where it can happen to him. He's driving. He's out and about. He can get pulled over. And it can happen to him. So I'm constantly checking in because of that need to protect him as his father, just like when he was a kid, when he was 8 and 7. That same desire is there. I'm just trying to figure out how to do it from a distance, from allowing him to be the man that I raised him to be, but at the same time, I'm still concerned because of the things that are going on, the reality of what's happening. So it concerns me. It concerns me. It can happen to me. But I'm not thinking about that. I'm thinking about his safety, him getting home to his wife and his daughters. So it's tough. It's tough. And I keep him in prayer. He's a man of God. My thoughts is he's going to be all right. But again, I don't think anybody's immune to this happening to him.
Wow, that's real. And for me, it was a very emotional experience. I'm not even gonna lie. It was very emotional because I had watched the video. I had heard the sounds. And one of the reasons I do that is in that moment, I don't know if it's some spiritual connection or something, but I don't want them to have to suffer alone. I don't want him, if I'm watching, I want a different set of eyes on you. I want a different set of eyes that see you. And then listening the way they talk to him, it crushed me because I remember what it was like to be that type of person that looked at another human being and just wanted to hurt them because something in them reflected something in me that I did not like. That was more than just simply beating him up. That was beyond just okay, you're resisting arrest. They wanted to hurt him. The language that was spoken over his life was language that denied him humanity. But then I also know it was what it's like to be someone who is hurt, like Tyree, who's in a position where there is nothing for you to do but run from other dudes that look like you who want to hurt you. So as a parent, I want my son, if, like his uncle, he becomes a police officer, I want him to be the type of person that doesn't harm another person because of who they are and what they look like. That scares me as a parent because I know both what it means to be vicious and vulnerable. Both. To be in a position where you're on the ground and compliant, where you're listening to others. Because this, in some sense, I think this is really a conversation about the way black men relate to one another. That's a very important conversation that needs to happen as well. It's we're not always relating to one another as if we love one another. In a sense of responsible love, as if I care so much about you, I respect you so much, but therefore I refuse to do anything that hurts you. Or if I do, because I'm a human being, I'm going to do whatever I need to do to fix that. I'm going to do whatever I need to do to stop other people from hurting you. And that was emotional because I know that like you, I can't protect my son. I can't protect myself. And it's yeah, who's to say that today or tomorrow or the next day, something doesn't happen to one of us? I at least want to leave my son with the news that his daddy at least cared about it. And so he got a record of his daddy caring about other people. And he left me with a certain type of capacity for compassion that widens, that doesn't close up. Yeah.
That's interesting. So your brother is a police officer, right?
Yeah.
And I know we were getting ready to move into that portion about how we view policing, that we seemingly always have this conversation to come back. What does policing look like? How do we reimagine policing? You know, we've had such interesting words as we talked about defunding and those different things. But from a larger, I would love to hear your narrative. Did you talk to your brother about this situation?
Nah, I can't have that conversation.
Really?
Nah,
Have you had one?
No,
with things before?
we've had talked about
What was
policing.
it like before? Like, what does that look like for you? What is that? Just from a, because I have family members who are
Yeah.
police officers who
So-
who see it in a unique way as well, and I'm like, okay, well, you know, give me some insight. So I just, you know, if you don't mind
Yeah.
sharing that, that's
Yeah,
interesting.
I always challenge my brother to make sure that he's aware of what a thing can do to him without him knowing it. So like, I was giving an interview for NPR. I was doing on NPR talking about this particular case, and they asked me, you know, about, you know, like policing, and if like, you know, like the problem of policing or whatever like that. And I told them, I said, you know, just like when we enter college and we get the ball, whoever we are, it don't matter who we are, we're brought into a culture that distances us from the people we came from. I'm from St. Matthew, South Carolina. When you go to Clemson University, you're different. You're now somebody else. You're now brought into another culture, so you kind of leave that culture behind. Everybody say, you know, there's nothing back here for you. And so with policing, you know, it's the same way. It's life. It's social life. We are oftentimes brought into culture that shapes how we view ourselves, how we view people, how we relate to them, and all of that. So like, you know, when he became a police, you know, he was trained a certain type of way to think. That and those type of ways to think are not always helpful. That doesn't mean that they're always harmful, but there are some things that's not always helpful. And like for me as an athlete, it's not helpful for me to think that I'm better than somebody who came from back home. It's not helpful for me to be like, yo, as if like this jersey separates me from you. You know, it's not helpful for me to think that, okay, just because I'm someone that people are cheering for on Saturdays, that I matter more than somebody that's from back home that's struggling to make it, that's working at Piggly Wiggly or working at the Chinese store, whatever, whoever doing what. And so, like, I always challenge my brother, bro, like, you gonna change when you in that car, when you got that badge and you got your service weapon, you are changed. But be the type of person that like realizes that like there's a culture that you've been brought into that has ideas about people that you did not create, but that has ideas about people that look like you that's actually harmful and hurtful, and be better. You're police. I can't change that. You can't change that. But you can be better.
Do you feel like, and asking all of you guys, do you feel like the normal police training needs to be different? So like, as you go to college to get a degree, the average is 4 years. Even to get, you know, myself for a black belt, like in the degree that I'm at now, it didn't take me 6 months to get this. This is years and years of work. And to be able to be a person or a leader, and however many months that it takes to become an officer, do you think that length is long enough for them to be able to hold the person or people accountable for whatever?
Wow. It's hard to say from this perspective.
All right.
Because I do think it is a profession that I'm hoping people get in with the desire to do good. And it's been unfortunate that I have ran into people who it's not been their desire to do good. And so the profession allowed them to kind of live another life. Policing, as with anyone in those positions, I just think is an extremely hard and stressful calling.
Thanks.
I don't ever call these jobs, I call them
right.
calling. And so, with that being said, I always hear how stressful it is, and I agree. It is one of the highest stressful type of callings, which means it takes a special individual. I don't think everyone should. Just with everything, I think in every kind of calling and occupation, we just know some people just may not have the temperament or the kind of skill set to master this well. And it just so happens that that is a calling and an occupation where not having it to a certain degree can be detrimental and deadly.
Yeah.
Right? Like if I'm called to, like I take my calling very seriously. I mean, to the point where it's life or death for me. And I understand what the calling entails. And I've submitted myself and sacrificed to everything concerning that to be the absolute best that I can be, but to also handle it with care. Because it is easy to get in my calling and do wrong and to manipulate and to not care for the calling like one should. And all of us always, especially within preaching and pastoring, we always gonna have to take on the brunt of those who didn't navigate it or handle this well.
Right.
But it's almost like if I was called to be a physician, like I can't be in that and then be or a heart surgeon, knowing that the risk of that and the tension that's going to take and it's a lot. Which means if I don't have the temperament or the feeling for it, this may not just be for me. There's a lot of other things out there that I could do, but someone's life is on the line, right? You know, those are the things that I just feel is like what makes it so unique and different. It's just, you know, it's a high calling. Those who submit themselves to it, utmost respect, man. That's a lot to go out every single day with that badge, gun, and I understand it. But there is also that other side that says, you know, I am getting into something that can be detrimental and deadly. And it takes a higher level of kind of temperament and other things, even a high level of empathy that goes into it than just what other occupations or callings may be. You know, so that's what I'm saying. I feel like even those who go to military, I mean, you go in there knowing that
Like you
that's a
know
different
what you're
thing.
signing-
Listen,
yeah.
this you know what you're signing up for. This is, you know, there are some people who just, you know, that just got that. And, hey, man, had everything, man. That's you got it. You know what I'm saying? So I feel like getting into certain callings and occupations, there comes this thing that I just got to understand that I got to be on it at all times.
Yeah.
I can't be slipping any day in this. And it's not for everyone. So those who do, I feel like, yes, there's a higher level of regard, but also responsibility.
Yeah.
I'm interested in your perspective because you have been at the highest level of leadership in the military, and you are. So many people are dependent on you leading them well. Like, and I think that perspective is so important, especially think about like training the right people and putting the right people in those places.
Yeah.
So I'm interested how you wrestle with that question.
Well, as was mentioned earlier, you know what you signed up for. And it's important that you accept that. When you don't, that's when things go in a bad direction. You know, when we served, our expectation was it was a sacrifice. You know, there are rules of engagement. Like them or not, this is how we do it. And that's the expectation. And it just seems to me sometimes we see these scenarios or these situations to where people may answer the call, but they're not ready to go along with what comes with that call. And then you have these types of incidences. We get out of the protection mode of protecting the people that we're sworn to protect, and we get into where we're going to protect ourselves. And that's not, in my opinion, that's not the appropriate mindset. You've accepted the call, and there are things that come along with this, and that's the expectation. And that's what I expected in the military. It wasn't always comfortable, but it was what I chose to do, and we moved from there.
Yeah, and I think that's real. I think for my brother, that is the thing. It's like individuals have to really make their mind up to be like that type of person. You know, of course, like leadership sets that thing, but like on an everyday level, like that person has to make it up in their mind that, you know what, I'm going to decide to see these people as human beings. In college, in my sociology degree, we had an area of community policing where, you know, I had to study on community policing. And one of the very important things about community policing is that it is just that. It is community policing. And, you know, and my professors would challenge that even idea of policing communities. It is literally, really, instead of community policing, it's community living. You know, you are living around these individuals. You are being in their lives. They know who you are. So that, like, when a situation presents itself, it's not as if I'm around somebody I don't know. Like, I'm around somebody that knows me, that I don't have to escalate it to the point of, you know, having to pull out my service weapon. And I think this is a very important, like, T word that we don't talk about. Trust. Community trust. Honestly, I don't trust my brother when he stops me. Because at the end of the day, my brother is still a police officer and I'm still a citizen. You know, at the occupation, I trust my brother as a human being, but it's the occupation that I don't trust. And that is a tough thing to deal with. Is the question really is like, yo, how do we build like almost like experiences of trust between communities where it's been broken?
That's a great question. I think, and it's been called about ad nauseum. So I feel like we keep saying the same thing over and over again. And once again, I think there are many who want to help bridge the gap. Mm-hmm. But it has to be a two-way street. Yeah. Like, it can't be one way for it to be successful.
Right.
And it has to be an ongoing conversation. And I really hate that it takes moments like this that we keep going back to the same conversation.
Yeah.
And it's almost like then we get fatigued with it and we just move on to the next hashtag or the next video comes out. I think it has to be a perpetually evolving and consistent conversation. How can we live life better together? You know, there's a difference. Deacon Cam was in the military. You were trained to handle people as enemies, as hostiles, right? But there were certain rules of engagement, as you said. Exactly. And I don't know how to make it better, especially when we view others as the enemy. Like, for me, that's beyond training. Like, I mean, we could talk all day about the training and all that stuff, and which is important, I think. But that's the part that I'm stuck with as a pastor, as someone who, by my very nature, looks for good in all, because I view all made in the imago Dei, the image of God. And that is hard to reconcile when that is not seen in everyone. Right. Good, bad, whatever the situation may be, you are still a child of God. And I don't know how you can get that into psyche if it ain't there, right? Like, how can I make you see me as not an enemy? I might be a person having a bad day. But my bad day shouldn't be my last day.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And even if it ain't my bad day, you know? So those are the things that I really kind of, I don't know. I think it's ongoing conversation. It's really hoping and praying, get people in those positions who have a heart for it, who view it as a higher calling. There's another conversation that we need to have. Out of those group, somebody didn't say, hey, we're going too far?
Out of 10 people? 10 or however many.
Like, hey, enough? Like, it's a culture so that it prohibited someone from speaking some kind of common sense in this moment, like enough. You know, that's I ain't even seen the video, but that's part. I can't expect the numbers and be like, somebody didn't feel like saying, hey man, he's up, we good. Lesson learned, if that was the part, or you know, I got so many thoughts and questions. It's just a lot.
It kind of comes down to the question of classism, right? Because, you know, you don't see these units in wider parts of town, if you will, right? So like these units are put into these hoods specifically, you know what I'm saying, to do this. So like these 5 officers or 10 officers, however many officers were there, like these officers are in this task unit specifically for this part of town. Like they don't go around all parts of town. They're in this part of town looking for whatever. So like I know I was watching like YouTube about it, and then like their nicknames were the Jump Out Boys. So prior to this incident, I think it was another incident that they had maybe 4 days before. They beat somebody else up. He didn't pass, but he was rendered unconscious, and then he called down to the police station, and the police station didn't ever, you know, get back in contact. And 3 days later, this situation happened. So it's kind of like, you know, thank God this particular time was caught on camera, but what about the other times?
You know, sometimes we get stuck at the why, in my opinion. And we don't go any further than the why. Why did this happen? Why did people stand around and watch this take place? That's an important question. Because if we want to get after how to create change, we have to understand what needs to be changed. And a lot of times I think we stay at a high level versus getting in the weeds and talking to those people, even though we may have to do some type of negative administrative or some type of action to them, but we have to understand this culture. You know, we talk about if we want to understand African-American culture or any other culture, we need to get immersed in it. We need to be inside of it. We need to figure out why people think the way they think, why certain traditions are the way they are. I think in this case, we need to figure out, well, what's going on that prevented somebody from saying stop? And then let's address that. You know, and it might be 10 or 12 other reasons, but let's address those versus just looking at the punitive part of it, but also trying to figure out what do we need to do to stop this from happening again, to empower people to do the right thing versus being afraid to step in and stopping something. I don't think we move on before we get to that point. You know, and we never understand what happens, and we're having this conversation again.
That's good. So I want to kind of close in this way. I want to imagine, you know, each one of us, and I really truly believe this, each one of us are faith leaders in our own right. I believe that there are people that look to us deeply as deep people of faith, as deep men of faith, that respect us deeply, who look at our work, who look at what we say, who look at how we relate to others, and they say, you know, I really will listen to what that person say, and I would trust it, and I will believe it. So, in this moment, say we have 3 people. We have a police officer, we have a young black dude, and we have somebody who's heard about this, like many of us are. What would your word be to each one of those people in this very moment? You know, because for me, Toni Morrison says, you know, we need to ponder the actual, but imagine the possible. And that's hope. It's pondering the actual. Let's talk about what really happened. But I do think as faith leaders, there is the kind of hope note that, you know, if it's not like, okay, everything's going to get better by and by, but like a word that will at least get us to tonight or the morning.
Great question. To the young brother, I would tell him you are valuable and your life is valuable as well. To that police officer, I would tell him you are valuable and your life is valuable. Because another part of this conversation, the other side is because of those moments for many of those who are on the other end, how their lives are now. And to put that into context, and so you can be greater than this moment. And you can be bigger than this moment. And I want you to get home safely too. That's the thing. I want everyone to get home safely and alive. I want you to get off work and clock off and go see your kids and your family. It's not a one-sided piece. And just with that young brother, I want him to get home and keep living and to know he's valuable. And to the onlooker who didn't know anything or, just we've got to begin to see each other as children of God. That at the end of the day, all of us are endowed with that incredible gift of the image of God. And regardless of our political leanings, regardless of our hue, regardless of what part of town we live in, that's still the banner that we all live under. And if we just view life and others through that lens with empathy, love, hope, to err on the side of honor and right, then I feel like those are the real cruxes to kind of help us to kind of move forward in this human flourishing that I hope and pray everybody gets to experience. I pray that God gives us that gift. He gives us a wonderful gift. And most of us take it for granted. But the gift of life is an incredible gift that God has given us. And I hope that we all can experience it. And that even though there are tough moments and interactions, that we'll choose right, we'll choose love, we'll choose, righteousness in those moments. And we'll all get home to live, to love another day. So that'll be my thoughts too.
I think for me, for all three, as a mentor to mentees, like I always tell my mentees, be the difference that you want to see, right? So how you move, how you conduct yourself, how you speak to people, how people view you matters to everyone else. Like even though you may think you're not doing good, but somebody else may see what you did that you think you did bad and sees it as amazing. So always be the difference that you want to see.
So I had a similar conversation with my son about what to do. What's your plan if this happens, if you get pulled over? So after the conversation, I gave him my input, but I think, added to his plan. I called a friend of mine who was in law enforcement or was in law enforcement. And I said, look, I told my son this. And I said, what do you think? What do you think about it? The advice I gave him. He said, no, I think you was on point. I think you gave him some good advice, but I would also tell you to think about this. And I would also tell you to think about this, because if you tell him to do certain things, this is what's going on over here in the car, in the police car. This is what they're thinking while you're doing X, Y, and Z. I wouldn't have never thought about that had I not had that conversation with my friend, this police officer. I would tell those three to talk to each other. I tell those three to take the time to get to know each other. Because when you communicate with each other, then you have a different perspective. You have a perspective other than your own to inform your actions or to inform how you're going to react. So I would ask them to talk. I think part of the issue is we don't know each other. So if they talk to each other and you say, well, this is what and this young person learns, this is the life of a police officer, this is what goes through my mind when I'm dealing with certain situations, he becomes human. He's no longer the enemy. And then when he understands your fear, when you pull him over, he becomes human. So if all three of them can get together and just talk about their experiences and expose themselves to a certain degree, I think we'll walk away with a better understanding of each other's lives and perspectives, and then we can make better informed decisions on how we respond to each other. Because we're not looking at each other anymore as a stranger. We're looking at each other, I understand what you're going through, so this is what I'm gonna do to make you comfortable or to help you out, and vice versa. I don't think we talk enough. I think we form an opinion and we live our lives according to that. It's bigger than that. It's more than that. And we don't take the time to get to know each other to find that out.
That's real. That's real. So I guess that's all. Thank you, each of you. That's a word that I need, and we'll think about for a while. You know, weirdly, I've listened to Lil Baby, The Bigger Picture, kind of on repeat this week, and it's made me really think about like that idea of the bigger picture. Like, we all live in a world that we have not created, but that we have inherited. And it is incumbent upon all of us as children of God, as humans, as those who are here to make things better, to actually do that, to make it better. You know, because we have one small little life on this planet, you know. Why not be the type of people that try to live the best type of life we possibly could for one another? And I think for me, that's what I would tell each of those people, because I know each of those people and have heard from each of those people this week and have felt intimately, particularly as a black man, as a black father, as an onlooker, as a chronicler, as a writer in this kind of thing, is we gotta do better. We gotta be better. But most of all, we have to take care of ourselves. I don't think it's normal for human beings to have to endure this capacity of violence. And we gotta do better to take care of one another, to be better to one another, to be better to this world. So, thank you, each of you.
Thank you.
For your heart, for your vulnerability, for your wisdom. And we hope that y'all somehow got something from that. I know that y'all have got something from that, and I hope you take it away, and I hope that you would be the type of people this week and beyond, that would be better to people, that would see people as human, that would love people, that would try to be the best that you can be. Because God is calling you to, all of us, each one of us. Every single day we wake up, we have breath to be better, and I think that can be true for all of us. So, we hope y'all enjoyed that. Be blessed. We love y'all. Take care.